Appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning. Nothing we're doing strategy-wise would fall into innovation. The innovation comes in the at-scale approach holistically. We sat down and looked at the entire spectrum of what's impeding student learning. And let's just kind of wrap it up. Let's say we saw 12 things impeding student learning. Well, we know the old paradigm would be we got to get a committee together. And then we got to figure out, then we can meet as a committee and we're going to figure out which one of these we're going to look at. And instead what we did is we took 12 and we said if 12 things are impeding student learning, then we're going to address 12 things. And that was our holistic approach implemented at scale. And this is not my first time at Calhoun. It is my first time speaking here. And I'll remember this because, those first are kind of memorable for us. We remember those first. It reminded me of the guy that was in the bar. He was looking over at the pirate. The guy had a wooden leg, a hook for an arm, and a patch on his eye. He said, man, you look like I had a rough life. He said, what happened to your leg? He said, well, you're not going to believe it. I fell off board the ship, and they were pulling me back on board, and a shark came along and took my leg right off. He said, that's incredible. He said, what about your arm? He said, well, another pirate ship boarded our ship. We were fighting, swords were slinging, slashed my arm right off. He said, that's incredible. He said, how about that eye? He said, well, that one you're not going to believe. He said, I was on board the ship, beautiful day. I just happened to look up about the time a seagull was flying over, and the rascal just pooped right in my eye. He said, that's incredible. You got your eye put out over a seagull poop. He said, well, it was my first day with the hook. So those first now can be memorable, I'm telling you they can. And if you look at your schedule, you'll say a holistic approach to significantly improving student learning. We don't significantly improve student learning with one strategy. So that's where the holistic comes in. And if we improve student learning across the board, we close the student achievement gap. So I'm sitting here thinking, somebody got the wrong presentation up. The intense professional development system has to reach all faculty in order for it to be implemented holistically at scale. Because what we found, and we air our dirty laundry at Wallace, and we're going to show you data from statistics from back, what got us into this initiative and where we are now, and a lot of it's not real appealing, but hey, it is what it is. We have to follow the data. And we'll move pretty quick. If I move too fast for you, there was actually an article in Community Times back in June of last year that kind of overviews the program. So if there's something you think you might have missed, you can go back and read up on that. But the key here is three things: training, support, and accountability. Now, am I talking professional development or am I talking the classroom? We're talking both. This is a two-way street. I spent 27 years in the classroom. Taught chemistry, earth science, coached basketball 10 of those years. So we've got experience as a faculty member. And we've only been on board on Dean of Instruction for about 4 years now, which is how long our initiative has been going on. The whole point of our initiative was how do we maximize student learning? First thing we looked at is we have to truly know our students. And I mean truly know. And if we truly understand the mission of the community college and put those two together, we know that this initiative would be faculty driven and maximize everything we're trying to do if those two things are in place. So I'm going to talk about two big articles today. One of them has to do with 30 million word gap. You can Google the article, but our question was, do our students really come with an equal opportunity? We know the answer is no. Research consistently shows children from families on welfare have as much conversational experience. Study on the 30 million word gap. Now you can Google it, but several studies have been done. It comes out 25, 30 million on all of them. What they did is they looked at the higher income college educated versus the lower income uneducated. And of course you got the middle group also. But when they looked at that upper college educated group, 30 million more words spoken in that household before the child even started kindergarten. The middle class had 12 million more spoken before the child even started kindergarten. So absolutely they do not start off as an equal opportunity. Now that wasn't the most disturbing part of the study, unfortunately. They also measured the number of encouraging versus discouraging words spoken in the household. You know that upper college educated group, over 560,000 more encouraging than discouraging words. What a positive environment to grow up in. Then they looked at the lower group, 125,000 more discouraging than encouraging. It was a 2-to-1 ratio. There was twice as many discouraging as encouraging words spoken in that household, and we have the audacity to question the motivation of some of our students. The working class had 2-to-1, but it was twice as many encouraging as discouraging. It reminds me of a basketball player I had in 9th grade back at Dothan High School. His name was Xavier. Couldn't throw the ball in the ocean. If you asked him to ring the Atlantic Ocean, he'd bounce off a couple mountains and it wouldn't go in. He was that terrible. But on defense, he had a heart like no other. He was Defensive Player of the Year 4 years in a row. You know how many games his parents showed up to? 0. None. Once again, I'll say we question the motivation of some of our students. So we had to really, truly know our students. Chronicle of Higher Education lays it out pretty clear. Basically what it's saying is, we know we came from a time where knowledge was paramount. I mean, if you had the knowledge on a subject, you could fill an auditorium. People just want to hear what you had to say about that particular subject. And now all of a sudden, we've got more information here in our pocket than all the libraries in Alabama put together. All of a sudden, knowledge is not as paramount anymore. So now, don't you hate that term? Oh, anybody can teach. I hate that term. What they mean is anybody can talk about what they're good at. That's what they really mean. Now let's reverse the question. Can anyone facilitate learning with a diverse group of students? And you know the answer to that. You absolutely cannot. Anything short of a professional educator, it is very difficult to get that job done. So our question becomes, what is a professional educator? Well, same as a professional nurse, professional welder, or professional whatever. It's committed to constant and never-ending improvement. Lifelong learner, growth mindset, whatever you want to go by. But if we're not constantly learning, then we don't fall into that category. So we need professional educators. Now this sounds like something going on today, doesn't it? Teaching's finally going to matter. This was 75 years ago. This stuff is not new. They've been talking about it for decades. We can go back to the Nation at Risk report in 1983. It very clearly delineated what needed to go on in this country. We were slipping in education. We were once number one on the planet and now number 16. So we were warned decades before. And these reports were produced every decade, culminated in the 2012 report, Reclaiming the American Dream. How many have actually read that Reclaiming the American Dream report? Raise your hand. Super. If you don't read any other article this year, go back and read the 21st Century Report on Reclaiming the American Dream. It very clearly states what the problems in this country are, and how we're going to solve those problems, and the challenges needed to do that. It clarifies the mission and the student. Now, we say, well, does it say anything different than the previous reports decades earlier? It actually doesn't. But what it did, they just cranked up the adjectives a little bit. Instead of having a redesign, a dramatic redesign. Now, we know how education goes. We don't handle little change well. You want to have a dramatic redesign? You already have people breaking out in hives. Professional development focused relentlessly on student success. Total transformation. We don't even like that word. In instructional strategies. Unacceptably low student attainment gaps. And when you say things like to remain open access, virtually everything else has to change, we kind of get a scope of the problem here. And then my favorite, courageously end ineffective teaching strategies. They've been saying ineffective teaching strategies for years. It's just now they threw on the word courageously because they realized it just wasn't happening. So understand one thing. It does not take a skill to implement a new strategy in the classroom. It doesn't. It takes courage because you've got to step out of that comfort zone. But it does not take a skill. The skill is in taking that strategy and then assessing it, reevaluating, adjusting it a little bit, going back and re-implement. That's where the skill comes in. So courageously end. Now, I'll make the analogy with swimming. Let's say we took 30 students to the swimming pool, never swam before in their life, maybe never even been in the water. And we get to the swimming pool, and what we do is we just push them all in the water. And then we stand on the side of the pool, and we say, you're not motivated enough now, you're not trying hard enough. Did you read that PowerPoint I gave you yesterday? You didn't even do the homework, did you? You better start trying more. And lo and behold, 15 of them swim to the side of the pool and get out. Now, historically, would we not? We'd hang our hat on those 15, would we? Hey, what a great job of teaching we did. Look here, I got 15 students learning how to swim. They've never swam before in their life. And we never once looked back at the bottom of the pool thinking, is that something we could have done for those 15? You think maybe we could change our strategy a little bit and maybe got a couple more successful? And we know the answer. It's a rhetorical question. Of course we could have. Maybe it would have required us getting in the pool and getting wet with them. Maybe it required us holding their hand to get them through the motions just to get them started. But absolutely we could, because we're not dealing with students who physically can't swim. Because see, I can't don't mean I'm incapable. I hear students say it all the time, oh, I can't do math. Well, I don't mean we're incapable. I can't skate either, but I'm not physically incapable of skating. You see what I mean? And we're not dealing with students who are mentally incapable of learning either. Not a one of them that walk through our door are mentally incapable of learning. They have issues, and they have problems, they have challenges. But the continued use, and we're just going to shoot it straight today, the continued use of ineffective teaching strategies are the most destructively discriminatory practice going on in this country today because it hinders upward economic mobility for those who need it the most. And that is the core of the mission of the community college. We don't make any excuses about that. We're not University of Alabama. We're not Auburn. If we could pick one, we'd probably pick the University of Alabama, but we're not either one. We're a community college. That's what we do. Joe Frazier fought Muhammad Ali for the third bout, and there's a reason they don't do 15-round bouts anymore. Just watch Muhammad Ali and you'll know. They don't do those things. It's too brutal. Joe Frazier came out of the last third match with Muhammad Ali, knots all over his head, his eyes were almost swollen shut. The reporter, he was about ready, needed to retire probably. Reporter saying, Joe, I don't understand it. Why do you keep boxing? And Joe looked right at him and said, because I'm a boxer. That's what I do. We're community college instructors. This is what we do. We take the least advantage, the least prepared. We take them from where they are and we provide them a high quality education. And we don't do that using ineffective teaching strategies. It can't be done. So as we go through the presentation today, we're going to be focusing on those. Terry O'Banion said it very clear. Just to kind of give them an idea of what's going to be required. We need leaders willing to disturb the universe. Now really, he could have just stopped after the word leader. Leaders are always willing to do whatever it takes. If it takes disturbing the universe, that's what we'll do. The mission is more important than the fear. So disturb the universe. It reminds me of, we're raising 3 grandkids. And when we got them, we're now raising them for over 4 years. When we got them, the twin girls were 11, having terrible time in school. Wouldn't do the homework, and the boy was having trouble too, but the girl just wouldn't do the homework. And I can remember sitting watching TV one night, and you remember the old Exorcist movie. I'm talking about 1976, give or take. That first Exorcist movie, that was some scary stuff now. There were people who had nightmares for years after that. While I'm sitting there watching, it just happened to be the old girl tied to the bed, padded bedpost, her face all scratched up, and she's growling and head spinning. Well, one of the granddaughters walked behind me in the room, and she said, "Oh my goodness, what movie is this?" And I said, I didn't even turn around. I said, it's just about some girl wouldn't do her homework. I promise you. My wife came in the room about 30 minutes later. She said, "What did you tell Alexa?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I'd already forgot about it by then. She said, "She's back there doing her homework." We don't take strategies in the classroom and label them, because labeling them is like subduing the innovation in the classroom. Oh, that's high schoolish. Oh, that's just spoon feeding. No, oh, it's just effective is what it is. And that was the same thing about that little statement. It was effective. May not work the next time. May not work with the night group. It worked with the day group. May not work with the night group. But it worked with that one. Whatever it takes. So we ask our faculty, if there was a guaranteed, we emphasize that for a reason, to significantly prove, not just student learning, not just student success, persistence, but we're talking about attendance in class, preparation for class. If there was a way to significantly improve those, and I'm going to throw this other one in just so we got everybody covered, at the same time raising standards. Because, we got to deal with that. We just want us to lower standards, right? At the same time raising standards. Not just student standards, two-way street. You got to keep in mind it's a two-way street. If you forget it, you end up in a head-on collision. It's a two-way street. We want the students to improve, we improve. We want students to improve critical thinking, we have to improve the way we teach critical thinking. We want to raise the standard for students, we raise the standard for ourselves. So if we have a guaranteed way to do that, just a simple question, would 100% of faculty be interested in pursuing? And I hope the answer is yes. But if you're thinking about that 1 or 2 faculty members that may not be, then you're thinking about 1 or 2 that the community college is just really not the place for them in the 21st century. We have too many challenges. Why would we not? Our whole mission is to facilitate learning. 25% of community college students across this nation don't even show back up for the second semester. Half don't even show back up at the end of the first year. We don't have an enrollment problem, we have a retention problem. And it's not really a retention problem, it's a student learning problem. You see how this backs up? Just to give you an idea, what can happen when you holistically address student learning and you do it across the entire spectrum. And I say entire spectrum, we really just looked at the top 10 enrollment courses, probably the same ones you have. Art appreciation, music appreciation, basic biology, math, English. Those top 10 enrollment courses. We run a little less than 5,000 enrollment in the fall. We have 10 to 11,000 enrolled in these courses. So we looked at those courses and our developmental courses. In those courses alone, the year after the initiative, there were 1,700 more successful students than the year before the initiatives. So it's a term we've probably never heard of in our life. You ever heard of grade deflation? You never heard of that, have you? I never have either. That's what happens when there should have been 1,700 students successful, but because of our lack of effective strategies, they were not. Now they are. So as teachers, we celebrate the fact that we now have 1,700 more successful students, but the human being in us looks back in the past and saying, I wished I'd have known this last year. I wished I'd have known it 10 years ago. And I start thinking about every one of those students that didn't make it through the class that I thought, had I jacked it up to the next level, maybe they would have made it through. And that's all this is all about. How do we get to the next level? It's not about doing anything totally different. It's taking what we already do and doing it with much more focus If you looked around college football, you'd say, who's the most awesome football coach on the planet? You could search everywhere. When you finally found him, you'd walk up to him and say, hey, Coach Saban, let me ask you something. How you do this year after year? He's not going to give you an essay. He's going to say personal responsibility. We ask them when they come on board, you willing to accept 100% responsibility for 100% of what you do, 100% of the time while you're at the University of Alabama? And if the answer is no, we're going to miss you. But if the answer is yes, sign right here, we'll get you going. And you say, it can't be that simple. And you'll talk about the process, personal responsibility in the process. And you say, well, it can't be that. Doesn't every coach on the planet use a process? Doesn't every coach on the planet preach personal responsibility? Not with the intense focus and passion that Coach Saban does. And that's what we're talking about. Not doing it a whole lot different, just doing it a whole lot better. So we say, well, what's the problem then? What's the number one problem? Across the nation. I'm not speaking about Calhoun. I'm across the nation. And I said general academic for a reason. Any health science folks in the room? Do you ever go through accreditation? Like every time they turn around, they're accredited to death. They understand standards. They understand this thing. General academic historically has never really had these standards, any. So that's why that was the first place we addressed. Top 10 enrollment courses. Every degree-seeking student on your campus has to take one or more of those courses. So that was a really good place for us to start. And of course the answer is faculty resistance. It's like John F. Kennedy said, change requires, or progress requires change. And change, unfortunately, has its enemies, but we can't improve unless we change. There's the dilemma. So the one word, you want to get rid of one word in your vocabulary that'll take you to the next level? Word fault. Get rid of fault. Don't matter whose fault it is. We got plenty of people to blame. We got plenty of parents, K through 12, society. We can go on and on and on, all the people to blame. It's our responsibility to take that student from day one where they are and get them to where they need to be. No matter whose fault it is. It's our responsibility to react to it. Key word. It keeps a positive in there. Because we understand the deal. Been around education a long time. These programs come and go, don't they? You got one come you don't like? Hey, just sit back and resist long enough. It'll go away. Because what happens when we sit down at the end of 2 or 3 years and we look at the data, we say, we didn't get this increase like we wanted. This program just didn't work for us. Oh, it wasn't the program. The program was wonderful. It was lack of at-scale implementation of that program. And unfortunately, students don't do optional. You ever heard that statement? Let's make this 21st century statement. People don't do optional. We're busy people. We got a whole lot going on. We do what's most important and what we're held accountable for. And that's why the 3 words were not just training and support, but also the accountability. Because see, we can go to all kinds of professional development activities. We can sit through 12 hours of professional development activity. When we go back to the classroom and do the same thing we've been doing day after day, there was nothing developed. So to get the development, there has to be something put into action. We're very big on action plans at Wallace Community College. Every assessment we do, whether it's a course evaluation or whether it's course success rates, we sit down at the end of the semester and say, okay, how can we address this? What are we going to do better? And we hit the hard question. There's a hard question here about breach of academic integrity. Because I know you're thinking, well, you're talking about students cheating on tests or plagiarizing, and those are important. No, we're talking about ones that affect millions of students across this country. And that is knowing a problem exists and just not doing anything about it. It's too difficult. We're just not going to address it. There's too many variables associated with it. Or even better than that, what if we set a standard but we fail to implement a system of, hear those words again, training, support, and accountability? Because let's be honest here. You could be the least effective faculty member on the planet, and you could set high standards. You agree? And you could always say, well, I set high standards, like you're the only one that does. That's not the question. The question is, where's your level of training, support, and accountability? Is it above that? Then you're in good shape. Is it below that? Then it's not the students. You with me? This is a lot like parenting. We can set that discipline level wherever we want, as long as the love level is higher. When it gets out of balance, bad things happen. We got to keep it in balance. Setting high standards is wonderful, as long as we provide a system of training, support, and accountability to back that up. What if we know there's issues going on in the classroom, but we just don't address them? We know they affect student learning. I'll pick out affective domain. I like that one, because that has to do with how the students feel. And I'm a science person. Hey, it's the data. We could care less what you think, feel, or believe. What does the data say? But really and truly, feelings do matter. We're human beings. When research consistently shows positive perceptions in the classroom increase student learning for every student. Over 5 times more for the least prepared, low-income minority student. You're not closing any student achievement gaps unless you address perception in the classroom. Because we know it improves student learning. Now, we're one of the 7% of colleges in the nation that do not give those evaluations at the end of the term. And I'll tell you why. When we started this process, we had courses with 40%, 50% withdrawal rates. Why in the world we want to give an evaluation at the end of the semester and not get any data from the students we need it from the most? That's the ones we need to know. Why are you leaving us? Number one reason students leave college around this country, they do not feel connected. Research shows they just make a connection, true connection. With 3 people on campus, the rate of completion doubles. I'm thinking, 3? How about every instructor you have? I wonder what would happen to completion rates if that happened. So affective domains are a very important one. So we do ours at midterm for that reason. Now that withdrawal rates are under control, maybe we'll change that. We'll talk more about those in a minute. You probably do course evals also. We never used those to improve in the past. We just give you a course about here it is. Okay, looks good to me. Hey, all the wonderful students said wonderful things. Those students were flunking anyway. No wonder they said bad. And then we'll throw it in the trash. We're good to go. We never once used them to improve. So we'll talk more about that in a second. So our challenge, we're one of the most educationally researched countries on the planet. We don't need more research to tell us what to do. What we need to do is take what's common knowledge and make it common practice. And that's the key. Making common knowledge common practice. We don't use words like common sense. You know, faculty do that. Well, that's common sense. Students ought to know how to do that. We took a picture off a TV. I like the camera, iPhone, something good on TV. I took a picture of it. It was a school bus. You couldn't tell the difference in the front and the back. It looked identical. And the question was, is it moving left or is it moving right? And I'm sitting there looking for windshield wipers, a bus driver. I can't find any of that stuff. They said 85% of 10-year-olds answered that question almost immediately. 90% of our faculty couldn't answer it immediately. Oh, really? Common sense. I said, we don't use that word, common sense. What it was, kids know where the door is on the school bus, and once they know where side the door is on, they know which direction the school bus is moving. It made sense after they said it. So we get rid of that word common sense also. Now when we started this process, it was pretty stressful. And some folks said, well, you know what, we got old so-and-so, and they're getting ready to retire, so how about let's just leave them alone? It's not worth it even addressing them. I said, well, that's fine. We committed to being a data-driven institution. We really did. So I tell you what, if we lay out the data and it shows we need to ignore it, we'll ignore it. And we laid out the data. Average general academic faculty teach over 300 students a year. So his 4 years, that'd be 1,200 students. Had the average success rate of the department, 75%, he would have had 900 successful students. Let him maintain that 50% he was at, and trust me, we had some much lower than 50%. I hate to say that, but we'll talk more about that later. 50%, he only has 600, so are we willing to sacrifice 300 students? That's the question. Just to keep from having to address something with one faculty member? When we get serious and we say, hey, this absolutely improves student success, why would we not implement it across the board? I always say, well, 2/3 of the faculty do it, but 1/3 they really don't have to. Well, why not? This isn't a pilot program. We don't have to see if it works. These are strategies we know works. So what we don't want to do is create a roulette wheel at graduation. You know how that is? It depends on which instructor you get. It depends on what kind of courses. You take it on the internet, you take it at night, you take it during the day, you take it in the fall when they happily implement a new system and it didn't work well. Well, we don't need that. We need as much consistency across the board as we can get. Chronicle of Higher Education calls this positive restlessness. And it's actually defined as a willingness to continuously improve. Is that not the number one thing SAC says? Hey, you got to show continuous improvement. That's what you got. Number one, you got to show continuous improvement. So we're not talking about anything a whole lot different. We're back to, again, we're talking about with a whole lot more focus and passion. Now, it goes by a bunch of other names, but that's why the mandate is doing nothing is simply not an option. Let's simplify this. Let's say you had, I got a problem in the classroom. Matter of fact, I'll go back to when we first started this process years ago in the science division. We had a faculty meeting, and we were just going over student problems. We said, well, let's just talk about some student problems. I was on the board writing. Attendance, I remember, was number one. Okay, attendance. Number two, I think it was writing. Writing. And then we went on down the list. We got about 8 or 10 on the list, and then we stopped and went back. And we said, okay, let's go back to the first one. What's anybody doing about attendance? Dead silence. Well, what about writing? Anybody do anything about writing? Dead silence. Immediately, we knew the problem. We knew what the problems were. We just didn't see it as our job to address them. So we started coming up with strategies. And we'll talk about some of those strategies in a minute. So doing nothing's not an option. If you say, well, I've got a problem in the classroom, first question you're going to get is what you doing about it. Not what your dean doing about it, what your president doing about it, what's the state doing, what are you doing about it? Your students, your content, your class, what are you doing about it? You won't solve the problem. We just want to make improvements in the problem. And you say, well, I tried so-and-so and so-and-so. Next question is going to be, how did it work for you? Well, it didn't work too good. Well, what you doing about it? You see how the cycle goes? And when you get folks answering them questions themselves, that's when you build a true leadership mentality throughout the organization. Goes by a bunch of different names, but every one of those names are the foundational definition of a professional in any field. So that's why our initiative is very simple. It's just I can. Improvement, constant, and never ending. Coined after a Tony Robbins phrase. The only thing I didn't like about his phrase back in the late 80s, it was can I? Constant, never ending improvements. That sounds like a question. Can I? I don't know about that. Can I? We want to make an emphatic statement. I can. Improvement, constant, never ending. And what kind of resistance can you get when all you're asking somebody to do is constantly improve? Let me change that. What kind of logical resistance can you get when you're asking somebody? None. You may get a lot of emotional simply because it's change. But that's in every area associated with student learning. Now what that means is we have to have a paradigm change. And we're not talking about something. There's faculty all across the country that are already on board with this. But the change is we have to start evaluating based on learning and results. Same thing SAC says. You got to show us some student learning outcomes. You have to show us that they're attaining these competencies. We don't care about how much activity went on in the classroom. Everybody on campus is busy. We want to know about how productive are you. Not how busy you are, how productive are you. Because you know what it was, old school. If you go back to the old paradigm, and we're questioning, why you only had a 15% success rate in your class? What's going on? Well, it's not my fault. Look at these PowerPoints. I gave him his PowerPoints. I gave him his handout. I gave him his video. I did all this stuff. I did my job. I covered the content. There's not a coach on the planet that would say that. Can you imagine a coach getting up on Monday morning saying, you know what? It's not my fault they didn't play hard Saturday. I told them to. It's not my fault they were running around like they didn't know what the plays were. I gave them the handout, told them to study them. You'd be looking at the screen like, really? This has got to be the most incompetent coach on the planet. Why won't anybody pay a dime to hire this guy? And it's sad that we hear that so much in education. Not my fault. I told them what to do. You know, telling's not teaching. We're talking about a level of teaching that's well beyond telling. And that's what it requires. But the thing about it is the personal satisfaction, just the invigorating empowerment that comes with changing that strategy is worth it to us. Because this is especially true for professional development activities. Unless something has been put into action, nothing's been developed. So your question as you leave today would be, what are you taking that you heard about today and going to specifically do in the classroom in response to that? That would be an action plan. Because every study concludes teacher is the most important aspect of a student's learning, hands down. There's a lot of variables associated with student learning, but teacher is the most important. Even the LaGuardia College president up in New York, one of the largest community colleges in the nation, said the single most neglected aspect of higher education is the teaching of teachers. We said, we don't have teacher certificates, most of us. Same thing with universities. But yet we're going into teaching. So it's kind of a dilemma. I'm going to lay out the data for you because we had a problem when Dr. Young, our president, brought me and said, I was really about ready to retire and go teach in another state, double dip a little bit. She said, well, we need you to come in on the interim. She said, you have any problem with that? I said, well, the only problem I have is I've seen the data, Dr. Young. And I've seen the data, and I know it's going to take a lot to change. She looked right at me. She said, we're not here to comfort the afflicted. We're here to afflict the comforted. And I thought to myself, whoa, do I know what I'm getting into? And I said, that's all the backup I need. But here was what I saw. I'll tell you, I saw the data. We took the top 10 enrollment courses, had about 90 instructors. And we just divided them into thirds. Because in business, they talk about the top third, the bottom third, middle third. So we divide it into thirds. And look at the success rate, bottom third compared to top third. 61% more successful students in the top third than the bottom third. Sometimes I don't like talking percentages because when I look at student numbers, I see faces. I see family members associated with it. You help one student get from poverty to educated, you didn't just help one student. Average family of 4. And if you're talking poverty, it's higher than that. Average family of 4. So that 300 students you have next year, that's 1,200 people you have the potential to impact directly. I'm not even talking about the number around them that are watching. Because when they do it, the people around them say, well, wait, if they can do it, maybe I can do this. Maybe I need to go out there to Calhoun and see what they have going on. But not when they see them flunking out and not showing back up everyone they look at. That just reinforces what they already know. Well, I can't do this. So you see the numbers there. And you can see just 2 years later what happened. 2 years later, the bottom third is operating at the level of the middle third. The middle third operating at the level of the top third. And the only reason the instructor effectiveness gap didn't close any more than it did. The top third absolutely caught on fire. These were already ones that were already implementing these things. To give you an idea of the paradigm associated with this, we put 16 of the most dynamic, energetic, active learning faculty in a room. And we asked for their best, one-by-one, best strategy. Went all around the table. We were hearing some wonderful strategy. Got through and we said, I tell you what, I want you to picture yourself taking 16 of these strategies as one faculty member, 16 of them, and we're going to drop you in a division 15 or 20 years ago. Do you think you would be readily accepted? And the answer was not only unanimous, it was emphatic. It was not no, but heck no. And that's when we knew the problem. We have got to flip this status quo. It has to be done at some point. Fortunately, do you know what the symbol for, in China, you know what the symbol for crisis is? The exact same one for what? Opportunity. Which one is it? Well, it just depends on what kind of person you are. You're a positive can-do person, it's an opportunity. You're a negative can't-do naysayer, it's going to be a crisis. Just depends on how we look at it. You want to create students that have a positive can-do attitude so they can be employed and keep that job in the workplace? We have to become positive can-do faculty. Yes, it's tough, but we're in the same boat together. It's not like we're floating in different boats here. That's why this is a faculty-driven initiative. So we have to keep things simple. Only new mistakes allowed. You can't move forward at a fast pace and not make mistakes. So we understand that. Just don't make repeated mistakes. See, John Maxwell says something about repeated mistakes. He says it makes a value statement about someone. It either says that what's going on in the job is really not that important in my life right now. Or maybe I just don't have the enthusiasm and commitment level high enough. You know, we talk about those, the negative, the naysayers. You know some of those people. I'm sure you don't have any here. But there's some that everything is negative. I mean, it don't matter what comes up, they're negative. You know how they are. They're energy vampires. They will suck the energy right out of you. They walk in a room, I'm looking to a window to dive out of just so I had to keep from being confronted with them. They reminded me of a guy that was looking for a hunting dog, and he found a hunting dog and just said, hey, this is a special dog now. He doesn't just go get the bird. He runs on top of the water to get the bird and come back. That guy says, not only am I buying him, I know exactly who I'm taking hunting with me. That pessimistic friend of mine, everything negative with it. He's going to have to be impressed with this dog. He went hunting. First bird they dropped, that dog ran across the water, got the bird, came back. He cuts his eyes. The guy over here hadn't said a word. This went on all day. Guy never said a word. So the dog owner's a little bit perturbed. You know, he's driving home. He said, well, what'd you think about my dog? Hey, that's all right, you know, for a dog. So you didn't see anything unusual about him? He said, well, yeah, that rascal can't even swim. I'll tell you what. Now the third one, repeated mistakes may say, well, you know, I really just don't have the competencies for this position. Here's the beauty of it. An effective professional development system that requires action to be put into place addresses every one of these. We got the question at Bellwether. They said, somebody raised their hand and the audience said, well, you got to tell us again how you got 100% buy-in on this thing. I said, whoa, we never said we had 100% buy-in. We said we had 100% participation. And the way you get that is you require it. Now, you may think that is a negative. That's not a negative, because the top third of our faculty took this thing and run with it. They're always looking for ways to improve. The rest of them, once they implemented these strategies and saw, oh my goodness, not only did I not lower the standards, I raised the standards, and I'm getting increased test scores, I'm getting increased attendance, I'm getting increased students showing up prepared for class, then they get the buy-in. You wait for buy-in on the front end, you'll be waiting until the 28th century and we'll still be talking about this stuff. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but psychology says the vast majority of behavior is determined by consequences. It reminds me, AACC was sitting there, a quote from a president came up, says, some change when they see the light. Others change when they feel the heat. But the point is just change. Yes, it's struggle going through the change. But the beauty on the other side is so empowering. So that's what we're focused on. Learning more from mistakes and focusing on improvement, not the final goal. What do you think happens when we go to that faculty member that's down there at 25% success rate? 25% consistently, semester after semester, and you say 75% is the goal. They're immediately overwhelmed for, oh, what you want to do, just give grades? I can't, no way I'm going to reach the 75%. You don't have to. You just got to improve. That's our focus. As long as you're improving, you're in good shape. But you know what? In the back of my mind, I couldn't help but think, well, maybe that's a good thing you feel like that. Maybe now you know what your students feel like when they make a 25 on the first test and you're sitting there and telling them they have to have a 75 and you're not providing that intervention that's needed at that point. So maybe it's a good thing. Empathy is a really good thing. Once again, two-way street. What works for the students works for the faculty. Now, I'll be honest with you, we didn't have any professional development associated with student learning and student success. We just didn't. We had one session. No, the year before we started the initiative, it was a 1 hour session. That's the first one we'd had in 22 years I'd been at Wallace. Like I said, we air our dirty laundry for everybody. But we ramped that up considerably when we started the initiative. And it's hard to get everybody together. You have to come with some innovative means. Email collaboration was one. Now, email collaboration, we only had one rule. If you're involved in email collaboration, professional development, positive and constructive. That's the requirement. Because you know what you'll get if you just open it up. You're going to start giving it as complaints. Everybody's going to be complaining. Then your adjunct are sitting out there thinking, what kind of culture they have here? This is awful negative. So that's our requirement. It has to be positive and constructive. And we send out a lot of articles. And I don't mean just send the article. They're already highlighted. We have notations where I've added my notes or comments. We send them to the division directors, associate deans. They add their comments. So that by the time it gets to faculty, it is relevant to their area. And it shows what's going on around the country. It shows it's not just our problem. This is a nationwide problem. That's why we keep it simple. ICANN is very, very simple. It's constant improvement based on data, not on feeling, belief, and emotion. So just like we don't want to ignore a problem, we don't want to look at it so close that we miss the big picture. My daughter was, and I really don't remember her age, 3, 4, or 5, and we was trying to teach her how to count coins. So I told my wife, I said, hey, I got this. I'm an educator. I threw out coins on the penny, nickel, dime, quarter. I said, tell me what's the difference in those. She picks up the penny right off the bat. I said, that's good, different color in there. That's it, 1 cent. I'm feeling good. I said, how about those other 3? I know she's fitting to pick a dime up, no smallest or the quarter or largest. Oh, no. She looks at the front. She flips over, looks at the back. She looks at the side. She gets down about 2 inches off the coin. I'm thinking, what do you want? I want to prod her, But I said, no, I'm going to let her do her thing. And about a few minutes later, she popped up with a dime in her hand. She said, I got it, Dad. This guy, he don't have a ponytail. I said, what? I've been dealing with coin my whole life. I didn't know Roosevelt was the only clean-cut rascal out of all 3 of them. I didn't know that. So I don't know what to say. That's wonderful, but let's back up a little bit. This one's the smallest one. This one's the largest one. She's now a mechanical engineer. She has a very analytical mind. So sometimes we just have to back away from it. Focus only on those core subjects. It just makes data collecting a lot easier. And once again, that's where 100% of your degree-seeking students lie. Because we know one thing, you saw the data. There is no way we're closing these student achievement gaps until we close that instructional effectiveness gap. So that's where our focus was. Now, on top of that, Chancellor says it all the time, 80% of jobs lost soft skills. Well, now, if you really read up on soft skills, what you're going to find is that's a cultural thing. That has to do with your upbringing and your environment. There's a whole lot of factors. And we're thinking, what? Now we got to incorporate that into our lecture? Now we got to incorporate that into our content? We look at it like it's a separate entity. In an active learning environment with maximum interactions and engagement, this is natural. You don't have to implement it. It's natural. Now, if I stand up and do a passive 60-minute lecture for students with no interaction, no, there's not any life skill development going on. That's why the active learning environment is so important in today's world. And if we're going to have a method of assessment, we have to have a quantitative standard to go with it. We cannot manage what we can't measure. We need a number. Faculty know exactly what their course success rate number is. So like in science, when the first thing they address is perceptions in the classroom, not instructional strategies, perception in the classroom, and they see test scores go up 5, 6, 7 points, oh, they have buy-in now. They're like, man, I didn't realize just changing these few things had that big of a difference. And like our question, it's always the same. What am I doing about it? Anything at all is a starting point. What we don't want is nothing, because a system will take something seemingly impossible and make it almost ridiculously easy. Taught chemistry for a long time. We'd go up to a student and have a problem in chemistry. When do you study chemistry? They say, well, never mind, you ain't got a system. Go on to the next person. When do you study chemistry? They say, well, it depends. Is it Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday? Go Monday, Wednesday. Never mind. Well, I don't know what your system is, but you got one. And if it doesn't work, you can adjust it. We have to have a system for us to take what's seemingly impossible, make it ridiculously easy. My grandson turned 13 last year, getting into sports a little bit. I said, I tell you what, if you can do 10,000 push-ups by your next birthday, I'll give you $100 cash. I thought that was good. He looked at me like I lost my mind. $100, 10,000 push-ups, that's impossible. Somebody do 10,000 push-ups. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. He's really good at math, really good. So I said, well, is it really impossible, or are you just not mathematically literate enough to figure out how to make the impossible possible? I said, I'm going to ask you no. Can you do 10 push-ups? His exact words were, anybody do 10 push-ups? I'll do 20 for you right now. I said, that's all I need. I need to know 10 is easy. He said, oh, yeah. So you could do 10 before you went to school in the morning, and then 10 when you got home, right? He said, I could do that. And right before you went to bed, just knock out 10 real quick before you jump into bed, right? That'd be 30 a day. There's 365 days in a year. And his eyes started doing that calculating thing. He said, that's over 10,000 push-ups. I said, thank you. Now, do you want to commit doing 10,000 push-ups for $100 or not? He said, I will. I said, good, because if you don't, you owe me $100. He said, whoa, you changing the rules now? I said, no. We're not changing the rules. We asked you, did you commit? We didn't ask you, do you promise? We didn't ask you, you're going to try it unless it gets too tough. We used the word commit. And commit means willing to do whatever it takes. So if you're willing to do whatever it takes, why do I even need to worry about you? Why do you need to worry about it? And I didn't throw in any extra, because I can talk for a long time. I left it at that. I went in his room a couple months later. I was totally impressed when I looked on his calendar, because I told him, you got to keep up with this stuff. I'm not going to believe you when you just show up a year later and said I did 10,000 push-ups. Every day he had 30. It got to Friday, 0. Saturday, 0. I thought, oh no, he's losing it. Looked over at Sunday, 60. Monday, 60. Tuesday, back to 30. You get the message, don't you? Sports, we call that. You don't have to have the lead if you got the heart to come from behind. In life, we call that compensating. Yes, our students come to us with a lot of challenges. Yes, they come to us where they didn't have the kind of upbringing that would have prepared them for success in the workplace and higher education. So what? Are we willing to compensate or not? And the fact is, it's very easy to compensate. Just change the strategy. Convert to a more active learning environment, which is, it's stressful at first because it's different. But on the other side, it is so rewarding. It is unbelievable. So the instruction for leadership had to have 100% participation. Have to. It's just not an option. Keep it simple. Now let's get down to the really instructional part. Let's get to some core. Because there's only 3 main areas that we need to look at for instruction. Number 1 is maximum engagement. Now we in science like to call what the flip side is. You know, if it's hard to tell what something is, well, let's say what it's not. It's not straightforward lecture for an hour and 15 minutes. Maximum engagement. Frequent low-stakes assessment helps out with that. And we're in a day and time where a freshman level course at a community college, midterm and final, and that's all? Really? Come on now, we got to reevaluate this. There's no place for that in a freshman level course in a community college. By the time I flunk the midterm, I might as well withdraw from the course. I don't even know how I'm going to adjust to reach a 70. So frequent low-stakes assessment allows a student to adjust their study habits, which most of them don't have any, right? What you'll say, but it allows them to adjust them, and it allows us to adjust our teaching. And relevant instruction. That's an irritating question, isn't it? Why we got to do this? Why we got to learn this material? Why we got to do this assignment? Yeah, it's irritating. That's one of the best questions a student can ask too. Because if you don't have a good answer, maybe you need to go back and think about it. Because we like bingo assignments. This is an assignment. When you do this assignment, your reading is going to improve, your writing is going to improve, your critical thinking is going to improve, and your study skills are going to improve. My goodness, we want to keep that assignment. It covers multiple areas. And by all means, don't forget that last one. We're not closing the student achievement gap if we're not providing supportive relationships. Do you think there's a coach on the planet that thinks their job is only to teach them plays in football? There's not one on the planet, unless they're the highly unsuccessful ones. They know it's all about getting that student from point A to point B through life, through football, through academics. Early, intrusive intervention. Early. We want our faculty identifying at-risk students in their class by the first day. They should have an assignment the first day that allows them to know that. At least by the end of the first week. And the word says intrusive for a reason. You know, our students come from a culture, they don't feel free just walking in a professor's office and asking them a question they already think is stupid. Think they're the only one that doesn't know it. Why do we need them to come tell us they have a problem? We've got the grade, we've got the frequent low stakes. We know who's having a problem. Hey, stop and see me after class. We'll talk about a few things. Early intrusive intervention. Now, we like those power assignments. We also like those power statements. And this works, I don't care if you're a student, faculty member, staff member, what. We say, I know you're struggling with so-and-so. What can I do to help you out to reach this goal? Sounds like a simple statement. Think of the 3 areas it covers. Number 1, let's lay the problem out. We all know what the problem is. Let's lay it on the table. We know you're struggling with it. We've seen the data. Here's the data. We know you're struggling. Step 2, what can I do to help you? What do you think a student feels like if you told them that? Now, we're real good about telling them what they need to do, aren't we? We have a whole list in our syllabus. You got to do this, you don't do this, you don't pull out your cell phone, you don't do this. And then the next question is, where's your list? What's the list they can expect from you? And that gets really uncomfortable because you realize once you put it on paper, they can hold you accountable for that. That's called personal accountability. So we have a new requirement for fall. You can put the list you want to on your syllabus about what the students are required to do, as long as you have the list they can expect from you also. Creates a two-way street. Creates a very collaborative environment conducive for learning. And don't forget the third part. Third part says, we have a goal. We have a standard. And we're not going to move that goal closer to you just because you have a hard time reaching it. But we'll do whatever we can with you to help you get to that goal. Because trust me, we had some resistance from some in the very beginning. And the rule was, when they walk in the office door and shut it, what goes on in the office stays in the office. I didn't realize some were going to take advantage of that as much as they did. And they walked in and they unleashed. And we're like, I see everything you're saying. But our mission is to facilitate learning. And we're going to do whatever we can to do that. So if I can help you get through this process and get over the stress, we stop by Applebee's, have a margarita or something, I don't know, but tomorrow we come in, this initiative is still going to be here. So what can we do to help you get through it? And we've already talked about, seems like we're going back here. Course standards, I'm going to jump ahead to this. We implemented 12 strategies, and some of those were very simple. To give you an idea, the first one was put a warm, positive welcome statement on Blackboard. When the student opens up their course, the first thing they see is a warm, positive statement from the instructor. We did some spot checking. And a couple of instructors, we sent them an email and said, hey, revisit your statement on Blackboard and kind of adjust it a little bit. Every one of them sent something back saying, in a sense, I didn't see anything negative about it. We said, whoa, we didn't say don't write something negative. We said write a warm, positive. You're riding the fence. You're neutral. That's an example of a simple one. But these are some of the core ones. Number one, this is a big one, unit objectives. When you came to a job, wouldn't you like if you stepped on a job for somebody to give you crystal clear expectations of what's expected of you on this job, what we're going to evaluate you on this job? Old school is, well, that's a rigor. They just got to figure it out. And if they can't figure it out, they don't need to be in college. Whoa. With that attitude, we don't need to be teaching in a community college either. Course objectives are the crystal clear expectations given before we ever start lecture. Here's your list of exactly what you got to know for the test. Be able to discuss this, be able to explain this, be able to do this. Exact list. Now, we had some people, they wanted to fight the study guide thing. I give a study guide. Why do I have to rewrite those in objectives? I said, when do you give those study guides? Every person that mentioned study guides gave them within days of the test. I said, well, unfortunately, knowingly or unknowingly, we're training students to not show up prepared for class, to wait to the end and cram for shallow learning, and then we wonder why they don't carry the material over to the next session. So this is absolutely the first step to the educational process, and when we skip it, we've undermined the process from the get-go. Does SACS require these? Absolutely not. They require a bunch of other stuff, GEO, PLOs, SLOs, course objectives, but not unit objectives. And that's the only thing the student wants to know. What do I need to know for the first test? Every course now has those objectives. Wonderful thing. You go to a tutor or a counselor, it don't matter what course it's in. Hey, I'm having a problem in Biology 103. The first question they're going to ask you, do you look up the objectives before you go to lecture? Well, I hadn't been. Well, that's what you got to do. I really can't help you until you do that. And if they say yes to that, the next question they're going to get, are you watching those videos that go with those lectures? Because every top 10 enrollment course has a complete set of instructor-made lecture videos. So they know exactly what to ask them. Number 2, writing assignments. This was an important one because faculty voted this the number one problem on our campus 7 years ago. Students voted math, so we ended up going math QEP. So we didn't go to writing. We now have a writing center to address that. But when we started the initiative, we had all the division directors in the room. We said, we voted this was the number one problem on campus. Can you tell me what you're doing in your division to address this? Dead silence. And then they all looked at the English director. I don't know, what are you doing? So we got to, you know how quickly this was solved? 60 seconds. We said we have 60 seconds to come up with a standard for writing assignments. I vote on 15, one a week. That got the conversation started. Whoa, no. So then it got down to 3. Every course on campus, you had to do 3. We don't care what they write about. That's your business. You don't even have to grade it for grammar. We know for a fact the more they write, the better they get. Walked through the math department right after this. You can imagine how this went over with math folks. And I looked in the classroom. These students were doing something. They were engaged, which was unusual for math at that time. They were engaged. The instructor walked outside the door. I said, man, what's your students doing? They look awful engaged in there. He said, they're doing that he didn't use daggone, that daggone writing assignment you have us doing. He said, I don't know what this has to do with teaching math. I said, well, I don't know what it has to do with teaching math either, but I know it has everything to do with teaching students. He came by my office 4 months later, apologizing for that statement. Said he learned more about his students in 1 semester than he had in 22 years of teaching. If that's not a testimony to writing assignments, I don't know what is, because you know if they write in your class, there's some things they put that you wish you didn't know. You may need to know, but you wish you didn't. But I tell you what, it helps us know our students. Grading scale was another one. We have to have some standardization. We just can't have everybody all over the board. It'll turn into a roulette wheel at registration. We looked at 3 syllabus, 3 different grading scales for one course, same course, 3 different instructors. The one thing they had in common, they all had 5 major test grades. So we said, I'll tell you what, let's plug in the exact same test grade for all 3 instructors. And do you know, depending on which instructor you had, you could have made a B, a C, or a D with the exact same amount of knowledge. And we have the audacity to say things like, oh, you just want us to lower the standards? We don't even know what the standards are. I'm just being honest. We're just shooting you straight today. So we had to standardize. The data was screaming, you've got a standardized grading scale. And the length of lecture. Remember we said maximum engagement? That means minimum lecture. Well, we had to quantify that. What do you mean by minimum? If I'm doing 75-minute lectures and I go to 60 minutes, to me, I made it more engaging. No more than 15 minutes before you do. And I understand some lectures are engaging. We challenge our faculty to do an entire lecture with nothing but questions. And what you find out is you can work them through the entire lecture and you're just answering questions. It will transform the way you teach, I can promise you that. Internet and hybrid courses. Dr. Joyner does a wonderful job in our technology with this. Every single internet and hybrid course we have has a complete set of lecture videos to go with every one of those objectives that are in the course. Every one of them. It worked out so well that we now have them in all the top 10 enrollment courses. I want you to think about this. Adjunct comes on board. Here's old school. Old school, here's your book. Catch you later at the end of the semester. Do what you want, when you want, how you want. Now we say, here's your book. Here's your list of course objectives. Here's a complete set of instructor-made lecture videos that are already loaded on your blackboard. You know, you can make your own if you want to, but you're an adjunct. We don't require you to make them. But your students are going to have access to a complete set that match every one of those objectives. Can you imagine how class would be if your students showed up having already looked up the objectives and already watched the lecture videos? Gracious alive, this would be wonderful. We could sit here and have that intellectual discussion. Half our final exam standardized. We feel like if it's the same course and they get to the end of that course, there has to be something in common with what we want them to know. And it was a wonderful opportunity to tack on those SLOs because now you have consistent data from every student that took that course. Those are just a few of the initiatives or strategies that we implemented in that process. Now I'm going to show you what the data and results look like back in the science division. We're going to go back about 7 or 8 years. This is where this initiative truly started. And it was with our Biology 103, one of our top 10 enrollment courses, by far the highest enrollment course on campus next to English 101. And what we did is we addressed positive perception in the classroom first. Look at this data. 71% or 73% increase in positive student perceptions, 31% increase in the number of students attending class. That's over 300 students a year that are now attending class that were not before. 5 times increase in the number prepared for class. That's over 900 students a year showing up prepared for class that were not the year before. Is it really a surprise under those conditions that the success rates went up 42% and withdrawal rates went down 47%? That's exactly what we would expect from that. But once again, it was every single faculty member in the department. Because we said before, your students could care less about your strategic initiative, GEOs and PLOs. Matter of fact, they don't even care about the SLOs, to be honest with you. They want to know, what do I need to know for this first test? So if you ask the science folks what 3 things made this transformation, first thing they're going to tell you is the positive perception in the classroom. Using course evaluations to actually improve perception. Number 2, they're going to tell you course objectives. And number 3, video lectures. Instructor-made video lectures for those. Those are the 3 things they would tell you got those kind of changes. Now, we have a problem with our course evals in that we do them online. Do you do yours online? Response rate 27, 28, 29% consistently year after year after year. That's not even data worth using. We don't even have enough responses to use the data. So you see the big jump there we had on the initiative? That's where the accountability part comes in. All we said is our faculty have a performance dashboard. They have a scorecard. So we said we're going to take our response rate and that's going to be one of your entries on your scorecard. Just put some personal accountability to it. Because we looked at it like a classroom leadership issue. We want students to do this, which they need to do, but they don't want to do. So if we can't get them to do that, we start thinking, how are you getting them to do that other stuff in class that they need to do but don't want to do? Don't know. But we shot up to 67% and it's remained about 65%, 6%. That's enough we can use. Now in the sciences, we took another approach. We just walked in the classroom. As division director, I'd hand out the course evals. We'd take them back up, tally the results, give them to the faculty member. We do not evaluate faculty members on course evals. Let's make that clear. We don't evaluate you on your course eval. You evaluate yourself on the course evals. We just evaluate how well you do that. So that's kind of a sneaky approach. You're kind of coming back door in. I don't call it what you want. I call it effective. We're back to our exorcist. Now, I'll tell you, this was a bone of contention right here. Because when we looked at the data, we're data driven. When we looked at the data, agrees and strongly agrees totaled over 96% for the college. If your initiative is constant improvement, why would you want to use data that's over 96% to start with? There's not a room for improvement. We looked at strongly agrees, it was around 70, 72. So we thought, okay, we'll use that as our indicator for improvement. If we want to show people how well we're doing, we'll send them the good and strongly agrees. When we sit down at the table to improve, we're going to pull off just the strongly agrees and analyze it. So faculty didn't like that too good. Matter what, one of the statements we got, well, isn't agree good also? I said, absolutely agree is good. But if agree is good, and there's another block out here that wasn't marked, what would we call that block? And they said, excellent. That's it. And unfortunately, our vision statement doesn't say we want to be known for being good. It says we want to be known for excellence in student success. So whether you give the logical explanation or the data, statistical explanation, the end result comes out the same. Developmental studies. Let's take a quick look at the data here. Because what we did is we took our Pell Grant eligible students as lower income. The rest of the students higher income. We broke it down minority, non-minority. Look at that minority. 38% higher success rate for the high-income minority versus low-income minority. What a gap. This gap does not have to do with race, nationality. It has to do, and we hate to say it has to do with income because it doesn't have to do with money, but it has to do with the kind of mentality that comes with the low income. So the gap almost completely closed just 2 years later. If you look at the non-minority, actually the lower income has exceeded the higher income. Insignificant amount, but it has exceeded it, which is why we put 100 plus. Totaling it up, the total higher income was operating around 65% before the initiative. Just 2 years later, the lower income had almost reached that level, closing the student achievement gap. And this division has the highest degree of positive perceptions on course evals in any other division, as it very well should be. They're dealing with the most at-risk students. We like to look at Math 100. You know, that's a most non-subjective course we have on campus. Problem is we had way too much lecture and not near enough problem solving going on in class. So we had to change to a more active learning environment. Immediately, success rates went up. That's when we got the buy-in from math. We like to look at courses around 50%. Because I'm a data-driven person. I like to see what statistically does 50% mean if I had exactly 50% success rate in my course. Well, it means that I was only effective in terms of course completion with the above average student in that class. That's the only one. I had zero effectiveness with the below average student in terms of course completion. And since we evaluate our success as a community college on how well we're able to educate our least advantage, that would be the below average student. So we like looking at those. You can see how many courses had those and then how many didn't after. Withdrawal rates, they took a dive. I mean, exact opposite of success rates. You focus on student learning, students get through the course. They get through the course, they're retained to the next semester. They get through the next semester, they're empowered to get through the first year. And by that time, they're on the road to completion. We didn't focus on completion, we focused on student learning, and the rest came. How many times do we tell our students, focus on learning, the grade will come. Focus on learning, completion will come. Let's look at the top 10 enrollment courses. Same gap, top 10 enrollment courses. Look at the gap there between low and high income minority. Almost 50% higher rate for the higher income versus lower income. Dropped down to 10% just 2 years later. And you can see the totals there also. If we take out the little insignificant 5% difference. So we've talked about the bigger goals. Get them through the course, get them on to retention. Our fall 12, fall 13, year after the initiative started, 16% increase in retention. And if the business dean's anywhere in here, that's over $500,000 in tuition alone. That doesn't even include other revenue. We don't do it for the money. We do it for the students. I'm just saying we have to remain viable as a college. There's too many around the state that aren't in that position. We had the highest enrollment in the state that year. It wasn't because we went and got more students. We didn't go enroll more students. We kept more of what we had. And we just got the data on completion rates. Our AA and AS degree completion rates from 10-11 to 14-15, over 65% increase. And those were not from reverse transfer, nor were they from calling students that had a bunch of hours to come back and get their diploma. So all we're saying is at-scale implementation of a holistic approach, not just one strategy, multiple strategies. It works. It's guaranteed to work. Now I'm going to give you just an idea, because we use this with faculty. Well, I'm going to show you the power of, it's kind of like the push-up thing. You know, break it down to where it's easy. Could you just get one more student retained per class? For every class you have, just one more student in that class that would not have been retained, you could get them retained. If every one of our 60 full-time general academic faculty, only 60, if every one of them did that in their classes, we'd have over 340 students a year. Or 340 students for that one semester that were retained that were not before. We spread that out over a year. If they're a full-time student, that'd be over $1.5 million in tuition alone. Okay, so half of them are part-time. Still over $1 million in tuition alone. So the financial part is just a side benefit. We're in the business to empower lives and to change lives. But the money is a good thing. Our professional development system, we had to ramp it up considerably. We use all kind of ways other than getting people in the room. I love this professional development all happen. That's why we like going to other colleges. We want to go to a college, hey, find out what the next level looks like. Then we're going to go run back. Dr. Joyner's already been taking notes back there. We get back to our college, we're going to say, how can we take this to the next level? Started the faculty spotlight, kind of highlighted this faculty member that was doing wonderful things in the classroom so they could tell all the other faculty, what are you doing that's so different? And you'll see some of the same things over and over. If you're not learning students' names, it's the top of it. I don't care what list you Google about effective teaching, know your students' names. Now here's the problem. That's all they say. Know your students' names and use them frequently. Now we've covered it. I had 3x5 cards I'd put on my desk, you know, in the order they were sitting. That's the way I help remember names. And it was Yahtzee chips is what we used. But when we'd ask a question, throw a little Yahtzee chip on that person's card. At the end of class, I'm looking down, I see 4 cards, don't have a chip on them. I know exactly who I'm fixing to call on before we leave class. I have a system for reaching every student in that class. We're not just freelancing. And I got that from back in high school. We had 14 observations unannounced in 1 year. They knew if they wanted you at the end of a year. 14 unannounced observations. And the best one I had was a guy that walked up, and I am basketball, but it looked like a basketball shot chart. He said, here was your distribution of questions you asked during class. And every single one of them were right here in the middle. None of them were on the periphery. As soon as I glanced at that, I thought, that's the last time that's going to happen. And I started making sure I had a system where we're going to introduce everybody. If you're sitting there lecturing and half the students are not on task, why do you keep lecturing? Stop lecturing. Do anything else. Tell a joke. Throw a paper. I don't care what you do. Throw a piece of paper at them. Rattle the cage, because windows of opportunity of learning are sometimes really small. Create the window through humor, through whatever you can, and then very quickly interject some learning. You catch them off guard before you know it, they'll learn something. Got to have that leadership mentality throughout the organization. You know, at the dean level, I should be only doing those things that only a dean can do. The president should be doing only those things a president can do. But to do that, we have to solve problems at the lowest level possible. Can't have a deans and VPs solving classroom issues unless it's something that you need some assistance on. So what lessons are learned? Keep it simple. Constant never-ending improvement. That's the core of what we do. Number 2, use data. Do not try to over-talk this thing. Let data do the work for you. Just lay the data out. Number 3, building that leadership mentality. See, that mentality always says, what am I doing about it? I'm not waiting on somebody else. What am I doing about it? And understand that resistance is just part of the process. Close family member dies, we go through grieving. You know, it's not a process we can skip over. We can try to, but it'll come back at some point. Just work through it. Stay positive and let the positiveness help work through it. We know there's going to be resistance. We just want to minimize the time and resistance phase. And one way to do that is to make it absolutely crystal clear that this initiative is going to be here from now till ever, because it's just constant improvement. Now, this is really one of my favorite parts, so I'm going to round this up really quick. Teaching adults and college students, they should know how to, no we're not, we're teaching students how to be college students and adults. I told them what to do, not my fault they didn't do it. Well, first of all, telling, not teaching. And number two, we already got rid of the word fault out of our vocabulary. It's our responsibility to react to it. Not my job to teach them, that's the parent's job to teach them those life skills. Whoa, that's a sensitive subject for me, so I remind our faculty. You know there's over 116,000 children in the state of Alabama don't live with either biological parent? I'm not even talking about the number that may live with them that's not getting the kind of skill training they need to be successful in higher education. I'm just talking about the ones that don't even have them. 3 of them living in our home right now. I understand this. So it don't matter whose job you think it was, we're definitely not going to release them into the workplace or on to higher education without those skills. Will this be on the test? We don't need that anymore. Is it on your list of objectives? Oh yeah, it's right here, number 2. Well good, then it's fair game for the test. Why do we have to know this? Good question. That's what makes it relevant. We got an answer for that now. Oh, so you just want us to give grades, huh? Well, let's see. Give grades or improve what we do and increase student learning. Now, why do you think it's going to be this one we want? Why not this one? It's kind of like saying we just want us to lower the standards. For general academic, there is no the standard. The state doesn't have one. It has a very vague description. I mean, about to do anything and conform to the description. But your department has to get together. The departments get together and figure this stuff out. My course, I can do what I want. Really? You can do whatever you want, ever how you want to, regardless of the effect on students. Regardless of the destructive, discriminatory practice, you can continue to do that? Really? In reality, it's Calhoun's course. And you can operate within the boundaries set by Calhoun, or the particular division or department set. Whatever those boundaries are set, I come on as an adjunct. I can operate all I want to within those boundaries. That's the guardrails. Why are we going to send a brand new instructor up a windy mountain road with a busload of students, let them drive off the cliff 4 or 5 times before they can figure this deal out? Why not just throw up some guardrails? You're guaranteed to make it up the hill. And you're guaranteed not to run off the cliff. It just doesn't get any better than that. I could, oh man, everyone hit us with this. I could teach them if you just send me a motivated student willing to learn. Really? And who's going to determine if they're motivated? You? How are you going to do that? The way they look, the way they walk in your class, the way they sit? Do you think overwhelming family problems at home could influence frustration in the class? Maybe look unmotivated? Do you think frustration in the class could make them look unmotivated? So we just bounced it back, two-way street, right? For every teacher that says that, I guarantee there's hundreds of students saying, if you just send me a teacher motivated and willing to teach, I could learn too. We're just being honest here, two-way street. I'm a dean. You send me motivated faculty willing to teach, hey, I can do my job easy with it. If I'm a doctor, you quit sending me all these sick patients, I could do my job, couldn't I? Hey, we don't make any bones about it. We're here to help the least advantaged. That's what we're here for. But the beauty of it is, all the rest of them, we're helping with that. And then having problems, come by my office. I asked them any question, nobody replied. That reminds me of my college days. 60 minutes of lecture, 30 seconds before class is over. All right, any questions today? Good, y'all read chapter 3, I'll catch you on Monday. He's off the hook, right? If we didn't raise our hand in that 2-second window of opportunity, you must not have had a question. We're looking at the data thinking half the class has a question. I don't need them to tell me that. I already know who does. Same thing about coming by the office. And we've already talked about that last one. That's probably the most common one I've heard. Not my fault. I told them what they needed to do. We're back to the coaches thing. Think like a coach? We probably would if we had our success rate posted over the front page of the paper every day, wouldn't we? We'd probably be a little more concerned about those success rates. So I tell you what, we actually implemented a leadership challenge too. This was just an intense professional development way to do a cohort of 25 faculty members, give them some intense professional development on developing a leadership mindset. We feel we can get through all of our full-time faculty in 5 years, just kind of a way to take it to the next level is all we're doing here. And I'll tell you what, you got one of the best, you got a good group here, Doc. I think they're going to go back to the classroom and put something into play. And hopefully it's not something, hopefully it's some things, more than one strategy. And I'll send a list of those top 12 strategies to you if you need them, but we've covered most of them through the presentation. Appreciate your time this morning. It's been wonderful.